business. Here we go. So, actually, I want to just say, if you're tracking, normally we take communion today, but we're not going to take communion today. And I have a reason for that. The reason is today's message has a lot to do with closing the distance between you and God. And so, when we take communion, there's this understanding that, like, if you think that there's something between you and God, there's some sort of hiccup in your relationship, it's important to go and kind of sort that out and then come back to it for it to be really as meaningful as it's meant to be, right? And so I just want to give anybody else a chance out there that may be struggling with a sense of distance today to have a whole week and come back next Sunday and really have time to cook on that with God. And if this is one of those days where you sense I have some distance, there's something between me and God, I feel far apart, I feel far away, I want you to pay attention today. Not that you should pay attention all the time, but you should pay attention today. So I'm going to jump right into it. We've been going through the letter. We've been going through this piece of the letter of Paul's letter to the Ephesians, and we're doing this thing called the armor of God. That's what we call it. And it's Ephesians 6. It's the last chapter. It's kind of like the final, list. Here's the things that you really need to take away. I'm not sure if I'll ever see you or meet you in person or see anybody. Again, I'm in a dirt floor dungeon prison cell. I don't know, but I'm going to get this letter out to you, and here's what you need to know. And so he says, stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with a breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. That's the piece we're looking at today. Your feet fitted with the readiness of the gospel of peace that comes from the gospel of peace. The wording's important. It comes from the gospel of peace. I don't know what your picture of what Christians should be like is, compared to mine. I don't know, when I was a kid growing up, I had a certain kind of an idea of what Christians should look like if they're out there being Christians. Part of that was from what I experienced from people, from church, or visiting our family, and being crazy and being out there. Some of it was from TV. Some of it was from my experience, hearing Bible stories and things happening in the church's history, things that I would pick up along the way. But I had this concept of Christians being these super ready people, right? Super ready to just jump out there, ready to act, ready to speak up, ready to move, ready to help, ready to lay down their lives for something important. And I heard stories and things. I went to a Sunday school for a time when I was a kid, and they would share these stories and testimonies on video, sometimes on VHS. Yeah, VHS. Remember that? Yeah, I got some of those tapes still too. And I just had this idea of this readiness. When Paul writes about our readiness, he writes about it in terms of putting on gear like a soldier, putting on his armor, and he's talking about the footwear. And I don't know if you've served in the military. Many of you have. I'd say about half. Most of the time, half our people are coming and going from the military, next door. And we're thrilled about that. You guys would especially understand the importance of having the right footwear. Right? You have the right footwear on, you're going to be all right. If you don't, you're really not going to be all right. In those days, Paul writes, the Roman soldiers had very high quality footwear if they could get it. The reason being was because they're out there in the dust and the mud and the blood, and people would sometimes lay down these traps. They'd try and lure a squad down an alley of some sort of barren path or something, and they'd dig up a whole bunch of stuff in the middle of the path, and they'd lay these spikes down sometimes, and then they'd cover them back up. Short little things, not enough to kill a man, but certainly enough to stop somebody. I don't know if you've ever stepped on a nail. Raise your hand if you've stepped on a nail. Who's had that experience? Oh, a lot of people. It's very popular. Okay, all right. No wonder everybody's doing it, but I've never had that happen. That's a real bummer. Right? That's a real bummer. That'll slow a person down. You know, having the right footwear, having the right traction gives you mobility. It makes you able to move when you need to move. It makes you feel confident to jump when you need to jump and land when you need to land. That's the kind of readiness that Paul is writing about, except in spiritual terms. Guys, you should be ready to move. That should describe you. Ready to act, ready to speak, ready to risk, ready to go, ready to take the punches, ready to absorb a surprise hit. Just ready. But that readiness comes from somewhere. It comes from this gospel of peace. That's the source of that readiness. Not your amazing Nike specialist, but like the gospel of peace. Gospel just means the good news, right? The good news of peace. And it's not just any peace, it's peace between you and God. You can have peace between you and God. That's the message of Christ, and now that's the message of Paul. Everybody, listen up. There is a pathway. God has actually sent himself to earth to make a pathway for us through the sin, through the regret, through the guilt, and we can actually be reconciled to God. He can look at us with that righteousness we talked about, which is not your self-made righteousness, but it's actually just the approval of God. After He's looked at your heart and examined you and declared you approved, you can have peace with God. This is amazing. And people who have peace with God and confidence that they have peace with God are very, very, they're just different. They walk lighter on their feet. You know, worry doesn't pull at them quite as hard. Things don't stop them in their tracks the way they might have stopped them before. Anxiety doesn't build up quite to the same level. Not when they're grounded on that peace that they have with their Father in heaven. When you know there isn't distance between you and God, okay, the pull of those things just isn't as strong anymore. It's kind of like, you know, this is a dumb idea. You're going to be like, oh, another dumb example from Pastor James, but you're watching you're a kid and you're watching a really scary movie, right? Just like a little bit too scary for your age group, right? Did you? No, nobody ever did that? Okay. Well, you know, and you, like maybe you went to the theater by mistake and your mom let you in there, whatever, and you're watching this movie and you're kind of like bracing your eyes open, like, you know, you're doing that thing. Here's the thing. You can get through it. Why? Because you know after 120 minutes, the lights are going to come on and you're going to be fine and you're going to go home. That's how it is as a Christian when you have peace between you and God. No matter how scary things look, or you know how much up and down, or how many people like you, don't like you, and how that goes up and down. Like no matter what, you know at the end, the lights are going to come on and you're going home and you're going to be fine. Jump to the end, it's all going to be okay. Because that's God's guarantee, right? But here's the thing. Oh, there is a thing. You ready? There's a thing. We're not always ready, are we? We're not. We're not. You go into, I don't care, any church in America, any church in the world, okay, on Sunday, Saturday night, whenever, okay, doesn't really matter, doesn't matter what county, you go into any church in the world, and there's this huge group of people gathering together, and people are singing beautiful songs and worship and giving praise, and they got a good music team up front. Many times, you know, if you were able to just kind of scout around the room and do a poll or something, you might say, you know what, I'm not so sure these people are ready. Like, I don't know that they want to do as much as what I'm reading about here in the Word. Like, how come they don't do more? How come I don't want to do more? Where's the fire, right? You've heard that one. You know, they're on fire for God. They want to do everything. Want to do all kinds of things. Want to talk to people. Want to go meet people, help people, give to people. Like, where's the fire, right? Does it mean they didn't have salvation? Is that what it means? Does it mean that the relationship was never real? What does it mean? Does it mean, am I okay? What's wrong with me?
Was my experience not the real thing? I want to tell you there's some things that can happen. There's some things that can happen. There are some peace killers, right? It would make sense to you and to me that if we're struggling with feeling like it's okay to put ourselves out there, it's okay to take a risk, it's okay to move or act or give or show up or pray, there's probably something going on in that relationship of peace. There's something a little bit less than peace. Some sort of distance is in there that we sense, and we can't quite maybe put our hands on it, but there's something there. Maybe it shouldn't be there. Some sort of a divide, some sort of a canyon. Why? How can that be? And I just want to kind of backtrack for a second and, remind you that when God sent his Son to earth, he extended his hand toward us. And he said, I want a relationship with you. Do you want one with me? Here's the path. Change your heart toward sin and toward me. Just have a change of heart, okay? Have a change of heart and confess and come toward me, and I will approve you. Walk with me. We'll have a relationship. I'm telling you, that's what it takes to be saved. Turn your heart toward me, you be saved. That's how it works. And many times, many people say, yes, and it's a miracle, and it's wonderful, and there's this lifting that happens, right? It's a big deal. Some of you can remember exactly where you were and what you were doing and who you were with when you said yes. Right? Raise your hand. I'm going to embarrass you. Raise your hand if you can pinpoint like a day or a time. You wrote it down in the Bible or something. Yeah. A lot of you guys can. I understand not everybody can because it was more of like a process. I get it, okay? But every relationship has a start, and then it has the relationship. Right? When you say, I do, I'm going to get married, yes, okay, now I have a spouse, right? So I could just put my spouse in a box over here and walk around and say I'm married now, right? You sign on the dotted line to join the military. I've joined the military. Well, there's the joining, and now there's the career. Relationships, connections always have a start, and then there's the rest of it. And sometimes when people start a relationship with God and they're reconciled to God, there are some things that may creep into that relationship over time, or there may be some things that they brought with them that were like visitors that they didn't even realize they were bringing. And this is the only peace killer that there is, but this is a number one that we're going to talk about today. And the number one, I think, is this, that many times we are actually waiting on God to reconcile with us. We are actually, let me clarify, waiting on God to show up and do some splaining about some things. We've asked him for forgiveness, and now we're kind of stepping back and waiting like, okay, now when is he going to come and ask forgiveness for me? Because there are some things in my life that I just don't understand. There are some problems that I have had. There have been some major disappointments. I had some pretty big expectations, and for whatever reason, he hasn't cleaned those up yet. I thought he would have cleaned them up by now, but he hasn't. Or I have a thought that if this is what we had, that this never would have happened. And here's the thing, not everybody handles that the same way. Many people would be embarrassed to say out loud, I actually have a little bit of suspicion toward God. I'm not sure, I don't actually trust him. Okay? How could you not trust God and then say, you're a Christian? How does that work? But the truth is, in relationships, as time goes on, relationships get challenged and tested. Things happen that we don't understand, that we didn't see, that came from left field. Things that were supposed to happen seem to take too long to happen. And when those things accumulate, we start to question. And when we start to question, we start to suspect. We start to suspect, we start to distrust. And we might not say, "Oh, I don't trust God." But the truth, if you are honest with yourself, is maybe you don't trust God as much as you did before. Yeah, I trust God will make the sun come up tomorrow, and I trust if I, pay my bills and be a good person, that things will generally go well for me. But I'm not sure if I trust Him like at the depth that they're talking about in the New Testament. Like make God's will the first in my life, and everything else will show up. Like, is that really, well, maybe in these areas, but not this area over here. The thing about relationships is we have two ways to respond. When we don't understand something, something creeps up, we don't get it. Something surprises us. Oh, where'd that come? I don't get it. We have two ways generally that we react. Kind of different sides of the spectrum. You probably are going to be able to pinpoint which one of these you are. And you can equate this to your relationships with people as well. I mean, God is a person. I mean, a different person than us, but He's a person. He's an entity. And so you can look at how you react and respond to people in your life and kind of pinpoint which one you're more leaning toward, okay? We have two reactions. One is we wade in. Some people wade in, and some people withdraw and wait. When they don't understand, they withdraw, they just wait. Wait it out. Maybe something will come along. Maybe they'll come around and explain. Maybe they'll come around and fix it. If you're a weighed-in kind of a person, this is kind of your response to, a problem you have with somebody or with God. I don't understand. Your first reaction is, I'm going to go bang on that door. I'm going to send a message. I'm going to call them. What is going on? How come you did this? Why did you do that? What were you thinking? Might be a little bit more emotional. I don't know, but you're going to go after it. You're going to go get in there. You're going to take responsibility. Somebody's going to answer. Somebody's going to figure it out. We're going to hash it out until it's hashed out. And you're not going to wait. The other opposite side, okay, is when something happens you don't suspect, you kind of play it. First you're like, I'll play it down. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought. Or, I'll just kind of trudge on through, and maybe it'll clear up. Or maybe it isn't what I thought it was. Or, but you're not quite being honest with yourself, really. Something is bothering you. You don't want it to be there because you're afraid if I let it be there, if I don't do something to neutralize it, it's gonna mess up my relationship somehow. So you don't deal with it, you just postpone it, stick it in a bottle somewhere, and put the cap on. Now, I will say this. When it comes to God, those of us who are weighed-in kind of people are actually at an advantage. Because it gets you started toward a conversation that you really need to have. At least you're willing to get started and get in there. And, it gets messy, but at least you're going to get somewhere. If you're more likely to withdraw and just wait, then it could be a very, very, very long time of distance. Very, 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 very long. You might wait your whole life out. Because that's how it can be. And some people are more vocal about it. Some people are less vocal about it. But what I want you to understand is that there's an incredible risk that comes with pretending or just waiting it out. It's the same risk as in any relationship in your own life. It's simply this. Well, actually, let me draw a picture for you. Jesus is in a boat, and you're in the boat with Jesus. It's you out in a rowboat with Jesus in the high seas. And there are shark-infested waters out there, right? The shark's just waiting. Nom, 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 nom. and you get into a conversation with Jesus and he says something you don't like, and you know what? I'm out of this boat. I am out of this boat. I will swim myself. You get in the water. And it's like, you may feel some sense of relief by getting out of the boat because I don't have to deal with him anymore. But the water's still full of sharks. You're separating yourself from the person that can keep you safe, that knows where to go, that knows how to row, that knows when and where and all that stuff. And in your mind, you're like, I don't want to deal with that. The sharks didn't get the memo. And in life and in any relationship, when we separate ourselves from the people that we need, from the God that we depend on, we put a little more distance. What happens is, it becomes easier to suspect. It becomes easier to distrust somebody the more distance you have between you. Because now you're not even having real conversations anymore. Now you're just trying to imagine everything that's going on. And man, don't you have somebody out there in the wings perfectly willing to whisper little things in your ear like, oh, what if it's that? Did you think about that? Can you really trust God? Did you ever really trust God? Were you ever really saved? Are you able to be saved? I mean, look at your history. Look at your past. You can't be helped. You're helpless. The further away you wander, the easier it is for that voice to penetrate. And you listen. The devil can't take anything that you don't give him. And the one thing he's after is your faith, your trust in the one who made you. That's what he wants. Distance is a peace killer. And I'm telling you, if you look around, it won't take you long to find somebody in your life, maybe somebody that you listen to, or an influencer, or somebody, and they're kind of vocal about how little they want to do with faith or God or the church or any of that stuff. And so many times, if you dig a little, if you ask for detail, they usually trace it back to what? Something happened that bugged me. And I kind of pretended it didn't bug me for a long time. But it bugged me a little more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And what was happening was they were slowly distancing themselves further and further and further until they really didn't have a whole lot to hang on to that would give them any faith anymore. And Jesus said, apart from me, you can do what? How much? Nothing, right? You can't go out there swimming in the shark-infested waters and not be in the boat. You got to get in the boat, man. You got to get in the boat. There are so many people, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. I have been one of them off and on at different times. I mean, I am not excluded from what I'm talking about. The reason I'm talking about it is because I know. Something bothers you. Something happened, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna soldier on. I'm gonna soldier on. I'm gonna soldier on. It bothers you more than you give away. It's doing something in you more than you want to admit. You want to think I'm so strong. I'm like, Donkey Kong, right? Stuff bounces off of me. I got big muscles, But the truth is, you're not. You're a person. And you don't want to end up in a waiting position where you're just kind of camping out, waiting. God is going to, God has to fix it. And then, He's got to come to me. And then, right? I'm just going to wait. I'm going to wait. He owes it to me. Oh boy, you're going to be waiting. He's got to replace what I lost. It might not even be an event that shook you up. It might just be you thought you were going to get more for what you put in. It doesn't have to be some epic thing. My favorite person passed away of cancer suddenly, or somebody, it doesn't have to be like that. Sometimes it's just slow and sure. I thought I'd have more of something. I thought I was going to get a better deal here, and it just isn't what I expected. I don't understand why. You didn't make a deal out loud with him, but you kind of thought that was part. And I just want to say this. This is as true as I know. You will not gain more clarity by separating yourself from God. You won't. You won't. You won't get more. You may get what feels like a little bit of relief for a short time because you're not living in the tension of having to confront yourself and work stuff out and all that. And that can feel very, high pressure, very uncomfortable, honestly. It can feel like you're living in the crucible, right? You're being cooked. I don't like it much, and things are bubbling up to the top, and I didn't want to think that was in there, and I just want to get out of this fire. But the more distance between you and God, the easier it is to distrust Him. You're not headed toward Him by stepping away from Him. I mean, it's just as simple as I can make it. Now, what do you do about it? What do you do about it? I'm going to give you 5 things. I'm going to give you 5 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Here's step 1. You got to have the courage to put the issue on the table. What are you talking about, Pastor? Is that like prayer? Is that like a special? You can call it whatever you want. You need to initiate a conversation with God. A conversation. You need a space somewhere that you've cleared a little, you've hoed out a little spot in your life someplace where you can actually spend the time, not feel hurried, not feel like you got to get out of there as quick as you can and get this over with, but a space where you have the time to actually put the issue that bothers you on the table. Name it. Give it a name. You could do that now, honestly, before you go today. Give it a name. Give it a name. The thing that didn't happen, the thing I hoped for, the thing that disappointed me, the discouragement I faced. For some of you, it's real easy because sometimes it's a person with a name. You're like, the rich situation or something. That's the situation. Give it a name. And be willing to start talking about it. Here's step 2. You got to walk through the issue. This is super what? This is so simple. You got to walk through the issue in words. In words. I just think something. I'm telling you, there's something about talking to God out loud using words that does something different than just kind of thinking thoughts in your head. When you're just thinking thoughts in your head, isn't it amazing how distractible you are? When you're having a conversation out loud with God, it forces you to actually finish your sentences. It forces you to actually follow through. It forces you to actually make it real. Where is this in the Bible, Pastor James? Well, it's under prayer. Look it up. Talk with your Father in heaven. Talk with Him. Jesus says you can. You have access to Him. And this is what I want you to do. If you're thinking about this, talk about what actually happened. What actually happened. There's power in it. There's power in naming what happened. What happened? What happened to you? Or what didn't happen for you? I mean, if it's important enough to be bothered about every day of the year, it's probably important enough to just get specific. This is what is not happening for me. This is what has happened. Maybe you don't understand, but this is what I see, and this is what it felt like. Felt like trash. Felt like awful. Felt like sad. Felt like discouraging. Felt like unbelievable. But it felt. This is what it was. And then here comes the hard part. Oh, I think it's the hard part. This is where it gets really real, okay? And you might even want to pause and talk through it with some other person. I'm not saying you have to, but this is kind of where it gets a little thick, right? It's time to acknowledge who? Acknowledge who? And what do I mean by that? I mean, in the events, in the history, in the trauma that you experienced, who did what? Who did what? You may have, zero responsibility in it. My dad died of cancer. You didn't do that. You have zero count. You didn't do anything with that. Okay? Or I had this awful blowout argument years ago with my parents, and we never spoke again. Well, what happened? What happened? Well, I said something I should not have said. Never should have said. And then they said a whole lot of something they really shouldn't have said. And then I reacted very, very badly. And then, call it out. Just walk through it. Assign responsibility. But in that, don't forget what Paul said at the beginning of this letter. You're not at war with flesh and blood. Not really. So let's give responsibility to who really deserves responsibility here. While we're at it. Yeah, I had a terrible relationship with my dad. That kid on the playground beat the heck out of me when I was 5 years old. Let's get real about it. Yeah, they did. They did. They're responsible, but who's really responsible here? Who's at the helm of all of that? Who's the strategery guy? Who's working the strings in the background? The devil. Paul says you have a real enemy. It's a different enemy than you think. And when you have a different enemy than you think, you need different gear than you're used to. This is the gear. Call it out. Acknowledge who. Now, this is kind of scary. I'm just going to be honest. For some of you, this is like the scariest part. And this is why. Because if you really put this, whatever it is, on the table, unless it's something that was totally out of your hands, okay, that earthquake that happened, I didn't have anything to do with that, right? But unless it's something like that, there's a very good chance if you start to dig in there, you're going to have to, in your chain of thoughts and your chain of logic, you're going to have to admit something somewhere that you're avoiding. I had a problem with that, so I did that. I was so angry, I lost my mind. And I punched that guy in the face. Like somewhere, if you're honest with God, it only makes sense you're going to have to get honest with yourself. There's an admission there, probably somewhere. And for some of us, we've had so many things happen and so many problems and so many, tornadoes in life, and we're just kind of whipping through as fast as we can go, and like my house got blown down, build another one, right? Just move on. And there's some things that never get dealt with, and there's a subtle fear, a subtle knowledge, and you're conscious and maybe this is the Holy Spirit helping you out too. If you slow down for a second, you'll probably have to confront some things. It's a lot easier to just not do that. Yeesh. Now here's another thing that's going to happen. Almost a guarantee. Number 4. If you get through that, okay, you get a gold medal for one thing. I'm proud of you. I'm seriously proud of you. If you've been waiting on this conversation with him and you just getting into this, I'm so proud of you. This is like game changing. Your life's never going to be the same kind of stuff. You can't go through this kind of experience with God and invite him in and work on stuff with him and not be changed forever. You become somebody else every time. But you're going to have to do this number 4, probably. Depending on your situation, you're going to have to surrender your ability to comprehend everything. You are. Read the book of Job sometime. We could go into this a long way, But the thing is, most of us believe a hoax. Most of us believe a hoax. When something happens that hurts us, discourages us, whatever, shocks us, we tend to think that if God would just come in and explain the whole thing to us from beginning to end, why every maneuver was, why didn't he come in and stop this? Why didn't he warn me about this? He might have warned you about it, you just weren't listening. But, why didn't he, swoop in, and why didn't he heal that person? And why didn't he do that? You and I are tempted to think if he would just come in and talk all about all of it, all this, the string theory of human relationships and how things are going to transpire, and he's going to do his will through generations, through, billions of people over to, you think, then I would get it. I would have proof, and then I could trust him. The problem is, you actually are not even capable. You're not even capable of understanding everything. You're not capable. You couldn't handle it even if he did. You couldn't. Your mind would explode. Your little mind's this big. You're going to have to give away your right, the assumption that you could understand everything if he would just explain it to you. I need proof, though. And here's the thing, that's not actually the proof that you need. The proof that you need, the proof that you've been given, the proof you have to come back to is for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believed in him would not perish but have everlasting life. You need to believe, this is your proof, that your Creator, though you can't understand much of anything else he's up to sometimes, you can understand that he actually values you so much that even when you're running away from him, he's willing to come running after you and do everything that could possibly be done as a human being, to give his entire life away to a punishment he did not deserve so that you could have a way back. That is a proof. And that's the very proof that you need. Step 5 is walk free and repeat.
Amen.
Walk free and repeat. A couple things about that, and I'll turn you loose. You're like, repeat? Wait, you say we got to do this more than once? That's a relationship. That's what it is. That's what it is. Something, I'm telling you, if you live very long at all, after you walk out of here, something's going to happen you don't understand. Somebody's going to disappoint you, you don't understand why. Something's going to shock you, it's inevitable. I mean, every person that you know in your entire life is going to die at some point. That's going to be really hard. This life is full of trouble and challenges and trials, whatever you call them. I mean, it's written up in the Word. We're going to face things, and we're not going to understand all of them, or even really many. And so we're going to have to learn to close that distance down when these things occur. We're going to have to get used to having those conversations. The healthiest Christians that you know, if you know any, are people that have learned to have this conversation as often as needed. And the more they have it, the more they trust. The more they trust, the quicker they come to it. And again, you're already I think I actually do need to understand. I actually do need him to explain it. I do. I'm telling you, I'm not going to be okay until I understand. Is that really true? Is that really the thing that you most need in your whole life, is to understand? No. The most you need, the greatest, is to close the distance you sense between you and the one who made you. That's the most terrifying thing that people live with every day, like it's no big deal. That's the thing that you need. And in this kind of relationship, in this kind of exchange, you do just the thing. You close that distance back up. He's already done what he should do. He's already given himself. He couldn't prove it in a greater way. And here we are, like, I don't know if I feel. It's like you just about got like a step and a half back and you're where you should be. It's just this, you got to have this exchange. And you got to be willing to have it again and again and again. I don't know, maybe you're just like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to go through. I don't want to. There are a range of emotions. I'm sure of it. I'm sure. But I'm just going to ask you this. What hangs in the balance? What could be on the other side of that scary one-on-one with God? You know, what kind of freedom might you be missing out on? What kind of amazing vision of how you can relate with God again and walk free and not be weighed down and fretting and drained of all of your enthusiasm and all of your adventure for the Lord. Like what lies on the other side of that? What are you missing right now that you could be living? It's just not happening. What are people who need you to be like that need to see Jesus in your life? What are they missing right now? Because, well, if you do it, you'll answer your own question. I'll leave it at that. Father, thank you. Thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you for doing what you did to come and get us back, to welcome us into the family, to offer us a place to be community together, in unity around the things that are most important, God. Teach us to prefer you over swimming with the sharks, if that's what we need, Lord. When we sense tension, Lord, I pray, Lord, bring us to a place of health. Let our first reaction be to reach toward you, to step closer, to make another call, to jump just a seat closer to you on the boat and ask you, okay, what does this really mean? What is this really about? What do I need to understand that I don't understand? Do I need to forgive? Do I need to add something that's not in my life already? Do I need to put up a safeguard? Do I need to learn to accept certain things that I can't understand? What is it, God? Help us, God. Let our first response become, come closer. Jesus, pray. In your name. Amen. Amen. If anybody has a really great exchange with God this week, the good news is we're going to take communion next week. And so it'd be kind of a cool threshold moment for you if you've been waiting on dealing with some stuff. And this is the time. It'll be a pretty cool day.